poem by Lord Byron is actually about one of his lovers. You know, he has several lovers, and this one is happened to be a married one. And he describes her as if she were a fairy again. You know, she walks like in the night. Yeah, she walks in beauty like the night, etc. But actually, she was in mourning. She was wearing black. But Byron describes her ways of walking, her beauty as if it were night. Okay, and then later on, people this is like shall I compare it to a summer's day? Later on, people use music, turn it into a song, so that the poem can be sung. Okay, so this is another very beautiful romantic poem. Okay, so let's we will talk about Ozymandias only very briefly. Percy Bysshe Shelley, like Byron and Keats, they are the young rebels. They are the young rebels, the second generation romantic poets. Keats unfortunately died very young. He was really a genius. John Keats was really a genius. Shelley and Byron, they had some really great adventures. You know, great adventures, especially emotionally. Like Shelley, he eloped. I think being the second generation, I think they lost confidence. They lost faith in revolution. You know, remember last time when we showed Pandonomian, Coleridge was really passionate about equality, against slavery, and supportive of the French Revolution, etc. But by the time of the second generation, they've lost faith in revolution. So they believe in their own revolution in terms of their personal life. For instance, you know, fighting against traditional marriage. So he eloped with wait, I don't have her full name. I should have her full name somewhere else. He eloped with first wife, with the first name Harriet. I forgot her last name. But then later on, he met Mary Godwin Shelley, Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein. And then he decides, he falls in love with her. And because of their being together, so I think both Mary Shelley and Shelley are kind of guilt-ridden. And I think this episode of the sense of guilt also gets written into Frankenstein. So that's something we'll later talk about. How Shelley, she's worried about several things when she deals with the issue of creation. You know, and one is, besides the possibility of miscarriage, and the other is her guilt over having somebody else die because of her. Okay, so he experiences Shelley experiences two family suicide. One is Harriet's, and the other is Mary Shelley's half sister. These deaths really haunt the couple, Mary Shelley and Percy Bysshe Shelley. Okay, and he died, as I said, drowned at sea. And some people rumor that he wanted to get the moon. Okay, and I think that's just a rumor, but he died at the sea. Okay. Okay, wait. Oh, this is where I had the name. Harriet Westbrook. Okay. So Ozymandias, like La Belle dans Saint Mercy, uses narrative frame. And the narrative frame has some functions that you should try to interpret. Okay. For instance, in La Belle dans Saint Mercy, you know, what is outside the frame and inside the frame turn out to be the same. And that's something to ponder over what it means. Okay. And here, I think the use of the frame is for the purpose of distanciation, to help us make transition to a remote story, and not a contemporary story, a remote story. Okay, and then in the poem there are a lot of ironies. it's pretty much about how human ambition cannot last. Of any kind, human ambition, will have to die one day. Okay, so there are contrasts or ironies that we see on the sculpture, and also contrasts in what the emperor Ramses says and what it really means, etc. Okay, and then also the rag and the sand, form another kind of contrast. So let's take a look at the poem itself. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert." Okay, so two vast and trunkless legs of stone. On the internet, a lot of people try to visualize what it is like. So this may be something like that you can imagine to be like. Okay, so there are two legs of stone standing in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage. Okay, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tells that its sculptor will those passions read. So here, pay attention. The syntax is a little bit more complicated. Okay, so we have relative conjunction, 就是关系代名词。Describing the visage, the broken visage, okay, and on the broken visage there is a frown, a wrinkled lip, and also a sneer, 冷笑, okay, a sneer of cold command, and these things tell that its sculptor read those passions of this emperor, of this pharaoh, okay, 法老王。Those passions read those passions well, which yet survive. So the broken visage and the passion yet survive on the lively things, the legs and the visage. Okay. Survive the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. Okay, so this is a very complicated sentence. First, there is a whose clause describing the visage to say that this visage has some expressions, and these expressions show how the sculptor can read the passion well. And secondly, it says that the expressions and the sculpture survive the hand that mocked them, which is the sculptor's hand. In other words, the sculpture survives the sculptor. The hand that mocked them is the sculptor's hand that imitate the passions. The heart that fed, and the heart is that of Ozymandias. Ozymandias 是那个 Ramesses II the second 的，好像是希腊名字。Okay, 他是希腊的那个法老王之一。Okay, so the heart that fed means this emperor. His heart fed those passions, but he himself dies. Okay, so there are different layers here. First, the emperor, the Ramesses, who has the passion, very great passion, and the passion survives him, and it survives the sculptor too, and it is kept like shall I compare thee to the beauty in shall I compare thee to the summer's day. The passion here and the beauty there, they get implanted on the poem and on the sculpture to survive human beings. Okay, but what the problem here is in Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day, the poem is complete, intact. It remains the same. But here we have a broken sculpture, and that's the difference. Okay, on the pedestal, and on the pedestal, these words appear. So on the pedestal, there are these words. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my words, ye mighty, and despair. Okay, so here there is this expression of ambition. Look on my works. Here I'm so accomplished. I have accomplished several things. So you see my accomplishments, and then you despair. All the other kings, you should despair. You can never compete with me. Okay, so the sculpture and the words both express the ambition and the passion of this king or this emperor. Okay, but right away there is a great contrast. Remember, this is a sonnet, and it is an Italian sonnet. So there's a contrast in the first part between the first part of the sestet, 最后是一个 sestet, the first 3 lines and the last 3 lines. Okay, nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. Okay, so it shows that on the one hand, Ozymandias is all ambitious. His ambition expressed in the words that I marked with red color. Okay, but then there are other images that show that even the sculpture itself cannot last. The sculpture can be turned to dust, can disintegrate and be turned to dust. Okay, and that's why they are broken. And then around the colossal wreck, okay, there is a boundless sand that stretches far away. Okay, so that's the contrast. And once you read the ending and then you reread it, you'll find out that the whole poem is actually not a praise of this emperor, this king, but it shows a big irony on his ambition. For instance, here he said that look at my works, ye mighty, and despair. One level of the meaning is that you should despair because you cannot compete with me. But then the other is to say that see how broken I am. How I'm reduced to nothingness. So you should despair. So even if you are greater than I, when alive, when dead, you'll be the same. You'll be turned to dust like me. Okay, so despair can have 2 meanings. The same thing with mock. Mock can mean imitate, but you know that mock can also mean ridicule, right? Okay, so the hand, very soon we'll be talking about My Last Duchess. Sometimes we don't really know what the painter or the artist, the sculptor, has in mind when they produce the artwork. Okay, so here the patron who wants the artwork done, wanted for something to demonstrate their power, but the sculptor that does it may do it with some other implications or ideas in mind. So he may be ridiculing the ambition of this emperor. Okay, so you see, I marked the places where there are contrasts. There are ironies. So just make sure that you read them yourself. You try to get to have a sense of the different frames. Right in the center, we have the living kings, who are survived by Ozymandias. And then Ozymandias survived by the passion that is described or presented on the sculpture. Okay, and Ozymandias survived by the art and the passion, and then survived by the passion shown on the sculpture, and finally everything turned to dust, survived by dust. And then the whole story is told by a traveler. See, don't forget that there is a quotation mark here, and this is what is really interesting. Shelley presents the whole poem as if it were just a speech, okay, told to I. Okay, so those passions or ambitions, etc., achievement, they were all long gone. What is what the traveler sees is just boundless dust, and the speaker gets to have only a bunch of words, not even the dust. Okay, so I think this is what is great about this poem, the many frames that show how time will pass and ambition will die, human beings will also die. Okay, I think that the poem rims get some further resonances nowadays because that is it resolved, the revolution in Egypt? Not yet, right? Our attention get to be distracted by Japan, so I don't really know. I think that the United States is intervening, and they want Gaddafi to step down, but I don't know if he has stepped down or not. Do you know? Anyway, okay, so here there are resonances today, to let us know how no power, no power can be absolute or can be eternal. It's always counterbalanced by some other powers. Yeah. Okay. Here, to provide you with some historical contexts, there is actually a sculpture being moved to. I have it here. Moved to the British Museum. Ramesses II, this sculpture is moved to British Museum. And this is actually an example of British colonialism. They just plunder into different tombs in Egypt and get whatever they can. They cut off the mummies, or they take away the sculptures to put in their own museums. Okay, so this is an example of the colonialism, but then it inspires Shelley to make comment on the great emperors. And he wrote it just a few years after Waterloo, after the complete failure of the French Revolution with the failure of Napoleon. Yeah. Okay, so these are the background for you. Okay. Shelley has another very great poem that you should get to read, 西风颂. Okay. Let me not talk about it now. Okay. There are endless great poems that you should try to appreciate. Okay. Okay, so we are now, with the last group of great poems, great classical poems, dramatic monologue. 19th century is actually the age of novels. The age for the period for the middle class to rise, to want to also read and learn and get entertained. So novel, especially after Romantic period, novel becomes the dominant genre. In late 18th century, novel is woman's writing. Poetry is the masterpieces. Poetry is canonical, the great pieces of literature. But novel is 小道, But since maybe 1832, after the Queen Victoria take reign, become with the beginning of the Victorian age, we have this rise of the middle classes and also the popularity of novel. And I think the dramatic monologue, 戏剧性独白, is the poet's response to the popularity of novel. Okay, so with a dramatic monologue, you have a lot of plot in it. Okay, you have a lot of stories implied. What is very interesting about it is that, it's just a piece of monologue. One person making a speech to somebody else who is silent. So you have to figure out the story by yourself after listening to that speech. Okay, so that's a kind of, it's a little bit like a hide and seek game that the poet is playing with the readers. Okay, so let's start with just a bit of definition of dramatic monologue. It's a poem that involves a speaker. Monologue is different from soliloquy. Hamlet has a soliloquy, which is the most famous one, to be or not to be. Soliloquy means he speaks by himself, to himself. Okay, monologue means that one person speaking alone to an audience. There is an audience. So this immediately complicates the situation because, this audience, this implied auditor, can have a very special relation with the speaker. And the fact that this audience does not say anything, suggests some story to fill up. Okay, some plot element to fill out. Okay, and then through the speech, usually we get to have the story flesh out. We have to piece together the what, when, where, and how of the story. And also we need to find out what the gap there is between what the speaker says and what he reveals. There is usually a dramatic gap between the two things. The intended meanings and the actual meanings of the speech. Okay. I think you will get to have a sense of that as soon as you get to read My Last Duchess. Okay. And I think today we are going to read two dramatic monologues. One is by Tennyson and the other is by Robert Browning. Robert Browning's dramatic monologue is especially dramatic. Okay, Tennyson is more emotional. His dramatic monologues convey some sentiment, but Browning's will really involve a complete story that you have to figure out by yourself. Okay. So the silent listener, the tone of the speaker, and also the dramatic scene. These are elements that you have to figure out. Like when we get to Ulysses, you will find out that some parts of the story we may not know, but that's fine with Ulysses. You still get the main ideas. Okay, but with My Last Duchess, it's very important that you try to figure out what happens. To the Duke and also to the last Duchess, and then the audience. Okay.